Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 379 of the Assorted podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that has a little bit for everyone. It's opposite day, so I'm Weird Beard, and tonight I'm joined by the radiant, the luscious. Were I unwed, I would take her in a manly fashion, the greatest hostess in the local galactic supergroup, Aaron Paulette. How are you doing, Aaron?
Wait, am I supposed to be you? I don't know. I don't know how to play the rest of this game.
Well, I mean, it's opposite day apparently, because we have people on the far left championing the Second Amendment. We have people on the right saying that you shouldn't have guns, and specifically at a protest. And if you have guns while talking. While interacting with law enforcement, you can expect to get shot. We have a Democrat who's actually making a pro-gun move. Minneapolis saying it's unlawful to carry a gun while protesting. I mean, today's opposite day.
I mean,
up is down, left is right, dogs and cats living together.
I had never thought about it that way, but that now I don't have to rack my brain and come up with a title for the show.
Okay, since you can't carry the bit, I am doing okay, Weird. We have a bit of a freeze warning tonight, and so when it comes to Florida, that basically means, it's going to dip down to 32 for a night or so. The longest it's ever been has been like a week, and so that's our winter. Meanwhile, I've seen the pictures of your driveway, and, you know, when the snow rises to about the top of the wheel wells, that's a lot of snow.
Yeah, I ended up, while I was clearing off my car, because, of course, snow drifts, and this was actually very, very light snow, so it was very, very good. Like, there were, 4-foot drifts in my driveway. I did, but you find an area that is high up and therefore can't be affected by drifts to measure the snow height. And I measured 21 inches on the top of my car, and that was in the morning when it had stopped snowing. But now I just peeked out my window just a couple of minutes ago, and it is A, still snowing, and B, there's at least 2 inches out there. So first thing in the morning, I get to do it again, but it'll only be a couple inches. So well, I need to at least clear off my wife's car so she can get to work, because my daughter had the day off of school today, and evidently the town is in such bedlam that tomorrow it is also there is also no school. But so we'll run some errands and do some other things. But yeah, it was, I was literally clearing snow all day.
Mm-hmm. So interesting, word choice there, with bedlam. Do you know where that's from?
I actually do not.
So bedlam at this point means uproar and confusion. And it comes to us from the Bethlehem Royal Hospital in London. And it was, back in the bad old days, an asylum. And so even though it has now become a, modern psychiatric hospital, back in the bad old days, it had all of the tropes of, asylums and lunatics. And I started to say, Victorian era, but no, it was actually founded in the Middle Ages in 1247. So, the more you know.
Yeah, I'd actually heard, I'm trying to remember where I heard from, but someone was actually referencing that in something like that. But thank you for reminding me that. And again, good old factoids for all of our listeners.
So I still think you should get a flamethrower to clear your driveway.
Yes. I mean, I was very, very tempted. There was a huge pile of snow in front of my front steps, mostly from my neighbor helping out. By the plows go by and they kick up all the salty, gravelly stuff, and that stuff is very, very hard to move. And so I have a snowblower. I was unable to get it started. It flooded very, very badly, and it gave me a number of problems. And honestly speaking, I don't think my driveway's particularly well suited for a snowblower. But my neighbor came by and blew out the bottom of it, but he ended up having to pile it up in front of my front steps, and I definitely felt like coating that with some napalm. But I did not, because... So for our patrons, if you are interested in getting Weird Beard a flamethrower, and then he will film using a flamethrower on the snow in his driveway, let me know, and we can set up like a GoFundMe or maybe even a top-level patron tier, and we will get the crazy maniac a flamethrower. This sounds like a terrible idea, Aaron.
A terribly good idea. Think of all the content it'll generate.
Here's Weird Beard putting out his valuable property. Here's Weird Beard in handcuffs.
Okay, so one last thing before we get to the segments. Last time I asked you about the headlamp that I got you.
Yes.
You basically said it was okay. I mean, it worked, it fit you, but you weren't impressed with the light. And I was surprised because it's supposed to be 3,000 lumens. And then I realized that a lot of times when you order these things, the batteries aren't fully charged. And I know what an energy hog that light is on the top setting. And so I figured, okay, maybe it's only like half charge. And I said, had you charged it? And you said no. And I said, okay, plug it in, charge it up, and you'll see a difference. And did you do that?
I did, and I did see a difference. But also, I also noticed while I was looking at it, because, again, it's attached to my head, which gives a very, very different perspective, because where I look, the beam looks. And I realized that, also, I have it set, the lens, it's got one of those lenses where you can either, have a very, very narrow penetrating beam or a very, very wide beam. And I set it up at the widest one. And I realized that at the widest setting, it is extremely wide. So it is technically dim if you look at any one location that the beam hits. But when you realize just how much area it covers, it's one of those, no, this is a big deal. But yes, I have literally used it almost daily since I opened it. It has been wonderful, though. It might be a bit before I end up going back out to the compost pile, as there is a massive amount of snow between me and it.
Again, I'm going to repeat my warning. Do not go anywhere near mirrors or other reflective surfaces with that thing on, because you will temporarily blind yourself.
I mean, it's actually...
You will just be seeing purple spots.
Bad enough that occasionally I will reach up to turn it on or turn it off.
Yes.
And my hand will...
Yes, it'll bounce off of your skin. Yeah.
Yes. And so the palm of my hand, which of course is, one of the paler parts of my body, will catch the light and direct it directly into my eyes. And it's no fun. All right. So let's get down.
So there you are, Mr. Lumen Queen. It is finally powerful enough for you.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is awesome. And the big factor is that I didn't quite realize how wide the beam was, because I wasn't really looking at it independent of how, my direct perspective, because again, it's stuck on my head. But then I realized, oh wait, no, like I have a long, narrow lot, and literally the light can go from edge to edge of the lot. And I would go out, and there would just be all these eyes looking back at me for the rabbits that were hiding in various spots. I can see you.
Yep. All right. So what's on the docket for opposite day?
So the first one I had is this one is from Tom Knighton at Bearing Arms, and is Trump pulls us out of UN gun trade agreement, and this is just effectively, I kind of read it as just an extension of kind of the EU gun restrictions. We heard about like some of the European nations in the EU had actually fairly liberal gun laws as things go, but once they joined the union, they had to crack down on their on their citizens' ability to own and use firearms. Has
Poland entered the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think Poland definitely had some restrictions.
They're little European Texas. I kind of figured they would tell the UN to go get stuffed.
Yeah, and the Czech Republic also had some restrictions, but I think, I haven't been following it too closely for the exact reasons why it's one of those when somebody from another country tells us how terrible we are for letting people walk around carrying guns. I don't care. So,
So anyway, this was UNROCA or UNROCA, the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms, and its bureaucracy, and the participating countries report information about weapons transfers. And I think I can say, without sounding like a lunatic fringe, that the United Nations very much wants to restrict our ability to keep and bear arms. Because look at what the majority of Europe, or even the world, is like. And so I don't agree with a lot of things Trump does when it comes to this. I absolutely agree. And so he pulled us out of this, and he told the United Nations to go get stuffed. And again, this is just like every other bit of gun control we have talked about, where the only people who will obey the law are the people who are responsible with firearms. Those who are irresponsible, intend to be irresponsible, intend to perform criminal acts, won't be stopped by it. And so this had the added injustice of, it's not even our sovereign government telling us what we can do. It's an extra governmental body telling us what we should do. And you're absolutely right, Weird. They have no authority to tell us what we should do in our country. And so this was a good step in telling them to shove off.
Mm-hmm. And I will also add that, monitoring the transactions of firearms is effectively a registry. Need any other example is anytime there is a spree shooting, it's within hours of the shooting, people know where the shooter bought their firearm because it's in the registry. If they bought it new from a gun shop, that's recorded, and then the manufacturer records sending it to it. Possibly there's a wholesaler in the middle there. They're able to keep track of it very, very quickly. And so, it's pretty well documented. It doesn't matter if it's the United States or Europe or Canada or any place like that. The places that have gun registries, the police never use them. Mm-hmm. They're not useful because, just as you said, if somebody is a bad actor, they're not going to be using a firearm that has their name on it, possibly because they can't get a registered firearm because they're a criminal. And so, it is absolutely pointless.
So I'm going to briefly pivot here. I've been talking to a reporter who has been asking me about the ATF, and as soon as the article goes live, I'm going to link to it. I really hope this quote of mine makes it into the article because I absolutely adore it. And we were talking about Form 4473's potential abuses, and I love this because I used the ATF's own terminology, and I think I really shoved the dagger home and twisted it. And so it's just one sentence, and I think it's beautiful. The ATF has constructive possession over a collection of records which they can easily and readily assemble into a gun owner registry.
Whew. Oh, that's savage. That is savage and very
yes.
true. And I would further go and say that, especially with the electronic records and that sort of stuff, no, they already have. It's there. It's illegal. They say it's not there. No one's believing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to it than that. And what's interesting is that the reporter was also talking to someone at the Cato Institute about that. And, you know, he was saying that, okay, this new policy by the ATF would create a de facto registry of trans gun owners. And I go, no. It's so much worse than that. It's because this can affect everybody, and they've already had the capability to do so. And so as soon as it makes it to print, I will drop the link. But until then, I'm just abominably pleased at working in constructive possession and easily and readily assemble. It's just like, how you like them apples?
Mm. All right, this next story is out of Florida. Can you take this, Aaron?
Sure. Okay. So I've got to find it in all of the tabs we have here. Goodness. So the head of the Florida Democratic Party is a woman named Nikki. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure her name is pronounced Fried, but it looks like it's fried. I have never heard it said out loud. So if I get her name wrong, I'm sorry, but I'm just guessing her name is Fried instead of fried. So she's the chair of the Florida Democratic Party. And what's notable is that, like last election, she was the Florida Agricultural Commissioner. And that is the position which oversees, among other things, gun permits, concealed carry permits, and also medical marijuana programs. And so she wasn't a bad agricultural commissioner. As far as I could tell, she didn't do anything egregious that infringed on my rights and liberties. And so, okay, there have been worse people here in Florida. But now as chair of the FDP, she issued a statement applauding an announcement that the ATF would loosen restrictions on the purchase and possession of firearms by medical marijuana users. And so, on one hand, you look at it and you go, hey, a Democrat has made a pro-gun statement. And this is true, but it is consistent with the way she has run things, because she has very definitely been pro-marijuana. And at least she is maintaining consistency and saying, hey, even if you smoke marijuana, it doesn't mean that you are suddenly forbidden to own a gun. It doesn't mean that you're completely dangerous, because, mini soapbox here, it's not like we say you can't drink any alcohol if you have a firearm. We simply say you can't operate a firearm while you are intoxicated. And if you do so irresponsibly, we're going to prosecute you. And that's how I feel we should handle all drugs and the intersection of firearms. And so she has taken this step. And so this is a pleasant surprise. And so good for her. And yeah, it's not a new thing, because she filed a lawsuit challenging the ATF regulations that prohibited medical marijuana participants from buying and owning guns. And so it looks like some things are changing for the better when it comes to the intersection of marijuana and firearms and the ATF, strangely enough.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add. This is just one of those, if you've got especially a legal, and it should be legal at the federal level as well. There's no harm in having it not be that way. At least Trump downgraded it a little bit so that it now can be studied, which is another probably good step towards getting it removed from the federal statutes. But yeah, this has
it was a Schedule 1, which is the most restricted, and basically it was like no good can ever come from this. And then he relegated it to a Schedule 3. I mean, you're almost a doctor. What is the difference with a Schedule 3 substance?
I believe Schedule 3 is what's occupied by prescription medication. Let's see. So, Schedule 1 substance is defined by no currently accepted medical use and high potential of abuse. Some examples are LSD, marijuana, and ecstasy. And then Schedule 3 drugs are drugs or substances or chemicals defined to have a low potential for physical and psychological dependence. Drug abuse is potentially less than Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 drugs, but more than Schedule 4. Some examples of Schedule 3 drugs are products containing less than 90 milligrams of codeine per dosage unit, so the Tylenol with codeine, ketamine, anabolic steroids, testosterone. So essentially it's prescription drugs that have a potential for abuse, but are not considered a high danger. Which, honestly speaking, seems exactly like marijuana because, let's be grown-ups here and note that, if you've hung out with enough people that have done marijuana, you've met a few people that have a problem with it. But it is certainly not as bad as say, if you know someone has been addicted to heroin. And I'm not sure where nicotine fits in on this one, just because that's one of those magical ones of the, no, everybody who uses this gets addicted. But either way, this is very, very good news. And also, I'm very, very pleased to hear that it's a Democrat. I was honestly a little bit disappointed that it was a Florida Democrat, just because it's a swing state as opposed to a deeper blue state. Just because I want to see this revolution happen faster, and just let's make the Second Amendment nonpartisan again. But we'll take our victories where we can take them.
Mm-hmm.
And the last story is the one that I think, well, Aaron, you alluded to it in the intro, and I think everyone who's listening is like, they're going to talk about this, and yes. So in Minneapolis, there has been another shooting of a quote unquote protester. I guess I could say easily that he was a protester. And this one is super duper wild. As I've been talking to people who have been asking me about it, is pointing out the fact that I'm saying I do not think this was a good shoot. I think this was a bad shoot, but there is a huge caveat on that, which is that this man essentially was at a protest. Looks like a woman got too close, maybe aggressive with an officer, started to get arrested. He essentially clashed with the officer, trying to get the officer away from her and prevent the arrest. So now he was subject to arrest, resists a bit. Essentially, a bunch of officers descend on them and get him down to the ground. It is at this point in time, it is discovered that he is carrying a firearm.
I want to point out that he was legally carrying. He did have a permit for that.
And actually, has officially been confirmed? I know it's in the article in the show notes.
Oh, I was just going by the article. I don't know if.
Yeah, let's run with it because at this point in time, I have not heard anything else to the contrary. So yes, according to this article, he had a permit to carry. I'd heard some conflicting accounts on that, but
well, we're still in the window of uncertainty, aren't we?
Yeah, pretty close. So, yeah, but either way, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that he was legally carrying this firearm. And so one of the officers removes the gun from him and starts carrying it away. And I have some videos in the show notes that you can click on, but resolution's not perfect, but boy, it looks like he is doing like a 4-finger grip on the gun, as in all fingers are below the trigger guard. So not even a, finger index grip on the gun. And as he is walking away, it really looks like the gun fires. And in case you didn't realize it, the gun that he was carrying was a SIG P320, which has been accused of, not proven, but has been accused of going off simply from rough handling.
And, arresting someone would count as rough handling.
Yes. But it appears that the discharge of the firearm into the ground was enough to make the officers concerned that he was firing at them, and they opened fired and killed him.
So what I think happened, based on what I've seen and read, is that, okay, they're arresting him. One of the officers shouts gun, indicating he has a gun. The other officer takes possession of it. The firearm then goes off, and all of the other officers, i.e. not those two, having heard one officer say gun and then hearing the report of a gunshot, thinks there is an armed suspect resisting arrest, and then they shoot him. That's how I currently interpret what happened.
I would concur with that interpretation from the knowledge that I have as well.
And so, just to be clear, it is tragic this man is dead, and I'm not saying he had it coming, nor am I saying that the officers are completely blameless. Let's wait for there to be an investigation. But it does seem to be a confluence of some bad decisions and an even worse coincidence. And so the man had the right to be carrying. He had the right to be at a protest. I heard he was filming the ICE agents. I'm even going to say he had the right to be armed while protesting because he was exercising his First and Second Amendment. When he starts to interfere with police officers, that's not an advisable course of action. And as responsible gun owners know, having a firearm on your person makes everything legally worse if you screw up. What could be simple trespass, accidentally becomes armed trespass. It's just an intensifier. And so if you are carrying a firearm, you need to be extra scrupulous. And so I think he made some bad choices, which should not have cost him his life, but they did. And so we can say that any number of decisions on any number of parties could have prevented this. And so the only thing I really want to drive home is the whole, if you are going to be exercising your constitutional rights, be scrupulous in following the law, because misunderstandings can, or bad choices can make things a whole lot worse. I know that I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here, but if everything is as I currently understand it, this is the sort of thing where, all right, if you think that the police, armed agents of the state, are arresting someone falsely or harshly, don't interfere. Just continue to film them and give that film to the press. Because if you start interfering with an arrest, I don't know if that's a felony or a misdemeanor, but I mean, you are inserting yourself into a high-stress situation with people who are armed and who are primed to regard you as the enemy. Don't do that. It's very similar to the whole, how's that go? Don't hang out with stupid people doing stupid things at stupid times.
Mm-hmm.
How one of the more dangerous places to be is standing on the corner minding your own business. So just be situationally aware and protect yourself first. And so now we've got lives that are ruined because this man, he's dead, can't bring him back. His family is traumatized. The police officers or ICE agents or whoever, their lives are going to be examined closely. And just at this point, I think I'm just sort of circling the idea. But really, it's just take a moment. Don't put yourself in unnecessary danger. There.
Yep. No, that is a great point. And I will also say that one of the things to think about is how we certainly are seeing a lot of claims that ICE agents are essentially doing ethnic cleansing, that they are not just arresting illegal aliens and enforcing the immigration code, but going above and beyond that. And that's the whole reason why there's this level of protesting. And if that's the case and that people are getting arrested and there is no due process for them and they are gone and there's nothing to do, so that you need to interfere with that arrest for the sake of the safety of that person, we have crossed into a completely different land than I believe we're in right now. And that is a time for essentially violent revolution, not noisemakers and cell phones and things like that. And so, and I don't think these people fully believe that that's happening. And certainly we haven't seen any evidence of this. And if we do, I'll definitely be one to be talking about it. Instead, we certainly have seen people who have been arrested because they were suspected as illegal aliens, turned out they were fine, and they were released, and other things like that. Again, just document it so that these people can take their ride, get booked, get lawyered up, and get paid, because wrongful arrest is a civil rights violation. And the idea to be fighting with officers and resisting arrest and all of that is, again, he was in his right to carry, but boy, he made things a whole lot, and certainly he did not deserve to die, but he made things a whole lot more difficult for it. And another analogy I made was, I've definitely heard some people be like, you don't need to look both ways in a crosswalk. You have the right of way. Yeah. And so therefore it's wrong if somebody hits you in the crosswalk, but you're still dead. Yeah. So we'll update if there's any new information on this. I mean, especially on if the 320 did in fact have a well-documented uncommanded discharge. But yeah, this is one of those things. Absolutely I've carried at protests. Aaron, you've carried at protests. But when you're there, just state your message. Do what you need to do. Don't be getting violent with things, because the time for when it's time for violence, it's time for extreme violence. None of this street fighting petty stuff.
I don't know if I would call what I've been at a protest. It was more like a rally. And I know that sounds a lot like I'm splitting semantic hairs, but it was a rally in favor of something, in favor of gun rights, in favor of carry, things like that, rather than, a protest, boo, we hate you, change, that sort of thing. So I don't know if I would ever actually carry at a protest because, among other things, I don't like people. I don't like crowds. Protests are noisy and there's the potential for things to go wrong. I generally avoid them. The best way to deal with an emergency is not to have one. The best way to win a fight is not to get into one. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the other part of this being opposite day is that the federal government, quite specifically the Department of Homeland Security and Kash Patel, has said that it's unlawful for protesters to carry a gun, even if they have a permit. And so it's very strange that we have people on the left who normally hate guns saying, this man was exercising his Second Amendment rights, and we've already covered that. But now we've got people on the right in the government saying you shouldn't ever carry a gun at a protest. And what's further interesting, or another log on the pile, is that back in 2024, the Attorney General of Minnesota, along with the AGs of many other states, they argued that there's no Second Amendment right to carry guns at events involving political speech, like political rallies and protests, because they're targets of violence. And so it's just this huge mess. And what I really hate about that is that I feel a lot of these arguments are not coming from places of principle. They're coming from places of my side good, your side bad. And I feel that if the people involved were switched, there would be an absolute tonal change. What do you think, Weird?
No, I totally agree. I think that there's a lot of people that are speaking out against the fact that this man was armed at a protest, and not because they particularly care about people concealed carrying, but because they have a problem with these protesters having arms of any sort. And then the same thing is, again, people that are standing up for his Second Amendment rights who are documented as having zero respect for the Second Amendment, but because it was one of their people, now all of a sudden they need to support them. And I will also say that there are states where it is illegal to be at rallies and public gatherings and things like that, parades and such, while armed, and you have to, and you cannot carry in those situations. But Minnesota is not one of those. I did actually look over all their statutes.
What's your take on Kash Patel's statement about this?
I mean, it's exactly what I said. It is him. Well, first, it's showing that, again, that the Trump administration is not particularly serious on the Second Amendment. It is, if we're all the pro Second Amendment stuff we are getting is just simply, boilerplate splash over. And, it's just a fundamentally wrong statement. And I think it's made purely for partisan reasons. Is the Trump administration does not like these anti-ICE protesters, and so therefore, they don't have the rights to do anything. They need to go away, and they all should go home and hold their breath.
My very cynical side is saying that the Trump administration is not passing these laws or repealing the bad ones in order to be pro-Second Amendment. The administration is doing it as a rebuke of the previous administration and to, quote, own the libs, unquote. Mm-hmm. And so, you can argue the ethics of doing the right thing for the wrong reason, and okay, it's still the right thing to do, but it does tend to taint the process. And this was an example, and in this case, it really does seem like, okay, the mask came off, and it's not about the Second Amendment, it's not about rights, it's about us versus you. And I really hate it when our constitutional rights are used to score political points. And so, I mean, I started to say that's where we are now, but no, that's where we've been for at least a decade, probably more.
I mean, it's just a tenet of authoritarianism. And of course, authoritarianism is not a left or a right wing, ethos. And again, authoritarian people do not like personal firearms ownership because someone that owns firearms can say no.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully, actually, there are enough people in the conservative 2A sphere that are actually calling out this nonsense for what it is and feeling free to talk out, to speak up against their own party. And so hopefully this will straighten that out. And I mean, if anything, I don't trust a lot of these, a lot of the Democrat politicians who have, many of whom have sponsored gun control laws in the past and have said that people have no right to carry firearms for any reason, in the past. But at least now we have these quotes to hang them on their own petard. Well, shifting gears, we were just talking about Minnesota, and with Tim Walz back in the news, turns out I had some audio of Governor Walz in an ill-fated push for gun control. I'm a little late to the party. I grabbed this audio around mid-December, but with the holidays, I didn't have a chance to look at my Fisk folder. So in the light of the announcement that Tim Walz has decided not to seek another term as governor of Minnesota and all the unrest in Minnesota, I thought I'd take one more opportunity to kick an anti-gun prohibitionist down the stairs one last time, especially when he thought he had a shot at the presidency. This was a press conference where he demanded gun control.
The folks you see behind me represent over 70% of the public in Minnesota who have clearly stated we do not have to live with gun violence the way we do, and that there are things that our elected officials should be doing to make our children and our communities safer.
This is something we see constantly. In the time leading up to drafting bills, polls show extremely high support for gun control. But once a bill is drafted, those numbers drop. And if it's a referendum, the ballot box numbers are even lower. More on that in a bit.
After the summer that we've had with Melissa and Mark, Gilbert's murder, with John and Yvette, with Annunciation, with Brian Thompson, just numerous events. We're all victims of gun violence now in Minnesota.
We've been seeing more of this. If we're all victims of gun violence, then also none of us are victims of gun violence. Also, if you want to do an appeal to authority fallacy, saying only victims of gun violence can dictate gun law, you shot yourself in the foot with that one.
And I've traveled across the state. These folks have traveled across the states. I've said in town halls, the deep sense of frustration, the deep sense of anger, the deep sense of grief and loss around gun violence, and to watch people stand and deflect and word salad about everything of this. There's too damn many guns and the wrong types of guns on the street. And I don't want to hear how do you define assault weapon. I damn sure can assign what it is and describe what it is and tell you what it does.
So you're mad about people standing up for their Second Amendment rights when you can't even describe the guns they want to ban. This is the reason why those poll numbers drop when the bill's text becomes reality.
And unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of parents now who know a lot more about what these weapons were meant to do. Not meant to shoot deer. They're not meant to plink whoever a Republican senator said he likes to plink, and how dare we take away his plinking. They are meant to kill large numbers of people as quickly as possible and with as much damage as they can possibly do.
This is a perennial lie told by gun prohibitionists. I'm kind of surprised it's still alive, given how easy it is to disprove. They're only good at mass murder? Then why do our police have them? And unless the law forbids them, there are tons of AR-15s and AR-10s being used to hunt deer. The 350 Legend cartridge was specifically designed to allow states with archaic hunting restrictions to use AR-15s to hunt deer. And hit any shooting range or gun club and see what people are plinking with. 90% of the long guns will be the Ruger 10/22 and various AR-15s. And both could be banned by your proposals.
I do not have the capacity as governor to issue an executive order to get rid of those. But what I do have the ability to do is to start to move in a direction. What we know is with the legislators you're going to hear from and the leadership of the advocacy groups here, we were able to move the most significant gun safety legislation in Minnesota history in the 2023 session.
Note the legislators and lobbyists are all gun prohibitionists. And his past legislation was banning private sales and instituting red flag laws.
And again, without a single vote from our Republican colleagues on things like extreme risk protection orders, which everyone, and the data came out, shows that we've saved lives. They've been issued over 350 times.
Issuing red flag laws doesn't mean lives were saved. I personally know people who were abused by red flag laws. Also, red flag laws do not offer mental health care to people who are allegedly in danger to themselves or others. Last, when a National Guard soldier from Maine had mental issues while on a training, he was yellow flagged. It's the same idea as a red flag law. It's just harder to achieve, but it's more powerful when it is. And the Maine police didn't serve it simply because he didn't answer the door and they were scared to push the matter further. A few days later, this same guy shot up Lewiston, Maine. No, I don't support red flag or extreme risk protection orders.
Something that we were not able to get through the 2023 session, which nearly stuns me in its simplicity, its need, and the recklessness if you are not doing this around safe storage of firearms so children and others can't get into these in homes. Every month or so, we see one of these where we have an accidental firearm.
Well, I agree with Tim. You should be storing guns safely. But what does that mean? Mandating that all people who live alone or everybody in the home is trained in safe firearms handling lock up their guns? That's pointless. Further, I wonder how many of the accidental shootings are from legal guns. Seems that drug dealers and gangbangers never seem to care about safety or legality. Also, Heller versus DC noted that safe storage mandates are unconstitutional.
That is not an accident. That is negligence by not locking that firearm correctly and not having proper storage around it. We will continue to educate on that. We will continue to get it out. And I would certainly encourage the legislature to move on this, to make that the case.
Why mandate safe storage when you can just go after negligence? So many gun laws are putting more laws on top of laws that already aren't enforced. It's already against the law to leave caustic chemicals or sharp blades out where kids can get them. So why do we need new laws for guns?
Because I can tell you, myself and every other responsible gun owners have trigger locks on those things and have them put away. It's that simple, and that needs to be done.
Governor Walz, you did a photo op hunting trip when you were running for vice president, and you were caught on camera struggling to unload your shotgun in a safe manner. You can't do basic safe gun handling, so save us the lectures. Also, trigger locks should be used only as a last resort, as they're easily opened even without keys, and are easy to install wrong and in such a way to make the gun more dangerous.
And the next one is one where Minnesota is going to take a lead on 2513. Since 1996 and the Dickey Amendment, it basically froze this nation's ability to do research around gun violence so that people could hold up their hand and say, I don't know, it seems like we have a lot more. No, we just don't have a lot more. We are the murder gun capital of the planet.
I'm not sure how this works, since the Dickey Amendment is federal law. Also, you don't need to do more research to know that we actually have one of the lowest global murder rates. Link in the show notes.
Because people have made the decision to protect gun manufacturers and those who don't want to take responsible action.
You're the one who banned private sales. It means you can't just buy a used gun from a friend. You need to go to a gun shop and possibly look at new guns. And new gun sales are the only time manufacturers make any money. Also, I've already caught you in a bunch of lies, Tim. So who's being irresponsible?
So 2513 will lay the groundwork that will require insurance companies to provide us the data on the cost of gun violence and guns in this state. And we are going to use that data to do the research the federal government is too cowardice to do, to understand that this is a public health crisis that could be attacked like any other public health crisis if we simply had the courage.
Insurance companies? I suspect these numbers will be almost exclusively street violence. Also, it's been a while since I've heard the public health crisis talking point. Man, that one hits different after 2020. I understand that the COVID response is a polarizing subject, but I get the feeling that everybody thinks it was mishandled in one way or the other. But now we can have 2 weeks to flatten the curve on gun violence?
So I encourage those insurance companies to get your lawyers if that's what you want to do and not provide this data. But I can tell you this thing is rock solid and you're going to provide it. And we're going to do the research on it, and we're going to have more evidence exactly to make the case. And we're going to establish a statewide safety council. This is an all-or-government approach. Those who want to talk about one thing, the job of governor involves multitasking on many fronts.
Except the Dickey Amendment was passed because gun prohibitionists were abusing public funds to crank out junk science studies that I've been fisking for over a decade. Also, they have the Michael Bloomberg School of Public Health, which makes its own junk science gun prohibition propaganda. Though I think the jig is up because no one seems to pay attention to that crap anymore. Either way, you give any gun prohibitionist access to data, they're going to abuse it until you take it away from them. Again.
There is one person stopping us from having a vote in the House of Representatives right now to ban assault weapons, which in recent polling showed 70% of Minnesotans support, 78% in the suburbs strongly support. Only 18% of people are strongly opposed to doing this.
All those big numbers for banning something you can't define. Speaking of red flags.
So the Speaker of the House should not be standing with the 18%. She should be standing with the 70%. She should be standing with the parents and those who are up here. She should be standing with law enforcement who knows this is the right thing we should do. And we in Minnesota are going to do it.
She should be standing on the side of agenda-driven ignorance. Just think of the 94 assault weapons ban. We complied with it, and they called it exploiting loopholes. Most modern ones have arbitrary exemptions that keep from being total monsters by banning the 1022 or making classic tube magazines high-capacity feeding devices. Never mind it's completely unconstitutional. She's clearly standing with the law and with the people.
We had time. We should have been doing this, but this is a run out the clock. This is the oldest strategy in the world. I don't know. I don't know if we can define what an assault weapon is. I don't know. Do you really think limiting them to less than 100 bullets is going to do anything? Yes. Yes, it is.
A definition is pretty damn important. Why would you think it isn't important? Maybe because you think that no gun ban is too egregious? Also, again, the 100-round fallacy. They don't want to ban magazines that hold 100 rounds. They want to ban magazines that hold 11 rounds. But they never say that out loud. Hell, they don't even say they'll ban 30-round magazines because people will say, "What? I own one of those."
Yes, it is going to save lives. Just like the extreme risk protection orders, which I can pull quotes from many of these folks who said, this will do nothing. This will not protect lives. This will take away our freedoms.
And they'd be right. Either way, looks like they did run out the clock because Walz has bigger things to worry about, like federal prison. Time after time, it turns out that gun prohibitionists aren't great people. Those are your anti-gun talking points and a few rebuttals to combat them.
So this is me being very catty, but I noticed when Walz was speaking that he made a lot of errors. He used the wrong word. And that tells me he wasn't reading from a speech. He was speaking extemporaneously. And I don't know why that bothers me so much, because people who are talking live, unless they are very, very skilled at this sort of thing, do make mistakes. I mean, I've been podcasting for, over 10 years now. I'm not a professional, but I still make mistakes. I guess I just hold politicians to a higher standard. And so when he is getting very, up in his feelings, and then he makes an error which he has to go back on and say the right word, it really seems to undermine the message. And I feel like if you're doing something this important, it shouldn't be extemporaneous. He had a very conversational tone. Is conversational tone really what you want when you're talking about gun rights and red flag laws and people being killed? I don't think so. I think it's very unprofessional.
I agree. And also to get back on his just desire to ban assault weapons by not knowing what that means should absolutely terrify everybody in Minnesota, because if he's just saying damn the torpedoes, let's just ban a whole bunch of guns, and it's bad news. As I mentioned, I said, the AR-15's definitely on the chopping block, but potentially also the 1022, most people's first firearm, is also very potential because it is a semi-automatic firearm with a removable magazine.
Well, as you observed, he has announced that he's not running for re-election. So That's good. I don't know how many more years he has left on his term, but he is a lame duck. So hopefully Minnesotans just have to finish out the rest of this.
Yeah, I believe it's this election in November that will be who will choose the next governor.
And now for David's segment, I don't even need an introduction because David has the perfect title for it. Buffer? I hardly even knew her.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. The AR family of rifles has often been referred to as Legos for adults. They can be set up in an almost infinite variety of calibers, barrel lengths, and configurations. However, care must be taken to make sure this doesn't negatively affect proper function. So in this segment, I'd like to talk about an unsung hero of AR parts, the recoil buffer. In a gas-operated firearm, there's a built-in delay due to the travel time from the gas port to the operating element. One design consideration is balancing the distance from the gas port to the end of the barrel and to the action. Ideally, the action shouldn't start opening until after the bullet has passed the muzzle. At this point, gas pressure in the system drops to zero right as things get moving. With this in mind, an AR buffer has two main purposes. First, using its mass to slow initial rearward bolt carrier movement. Second, acting as a dead blow hammer to prevent, or at least reduce, bolt bounce on closing. This latter function is made possible by a series of weights that slide back and forth inside the buffer during cycling. One of the easiest adjustments we can make to tune the operation of an AR action is swapping out a standard weight buffer for one that's heavier or lighter as appropriate. Most commercial rifle caliber ARs tend to be overgassed, especially carbines. This means the bolt carrier will start moving sooner and will cycle faster after firing than may be optimal for proper function. Some of the signs of an overgassed AR can be noticeably heavier felt recoil, brass ejecting in an arc from almost directly forward to nearly straight out to the side, feeding issues such as bolt over base, and failure to lock open on an empty magazine. Finally, overgassed ARs tend to get dirty quicker. Undergassed ARs will often eject cases almost straight back. Extraction, ejection, and feed issues such as stovepiping, ram strikes, and failure to lock open when empty are also possible signs of an undergassed AR. Attentive listeners may have noticed that feeding issues and failure to lock open when empty were mentioned as possible symptoms for both over and undergassed rifles. This has to do with cycling speed. If the bolt carrier moves too soon, as in an overgassed rifle, it may try to pull the case out of the chamber while friction is high, stretching the case body or even tearing the rim. This also often means the bolt carrier is traveling too fast and may reciprocate before the magazine can lift the next cartridge into proper position for feeding. This can cause the bolt to ride over the top round in the magazine, pinning it against the barrel ramp or partway into the chamber. If the bolt carrier moves too slow, as in an undergassed rifle, it may not travel back far enough to clear the top round in the magazine, or if it does clear, not have enough energy to fully chamber the next round. This too fast or not enough travel issue may also prevent the rifle from locking open on empty. Either the follower won't have enough time to engage the bolt hold open, or the bolt carrier won't travel back far enough to clear the engagement surface. If a rifle is over or under gassed, in addition to other possible solutions, there are a few buffer weight options available to attempt resolution of the issue. Standard rifle buffers tend to weigh around 5 ounces. Odinworks, to name one manufacturer, offers a configurable rifle buffer that comes with 5.5 aluminum, 3 stainless steel, and 2 tungsten weights. By changing combinations, this allows for a buffer weight range of 3.9 to 7.3 ounces, enabling the owner to tune the buffer weight for optimal performance. Carbines, due both to their popularity and greater likelihood of experiencing cycling issues due to their shorter gas system, have more buffer weight choices available. The original carbine buffer weighs in at right around 3 ounces even. Especially noted in full auto carbines, cycling speed was often found to be too fast for reliable function of the firearm, so a series of buffers with incrementally increasing weight were introduced, starting with the H1 at 3.8 ounces, followed by the H2 running from 4.6 to 4.8 ounces, and finally the H3 weighing in at 5 to 5.4 ounces. One of these heavier buffers will usually ameliorate certain cycling issues common to rifle caliber carbines. For more precise adjustments, CAC Industry, to name another manufacturer, makes a configurable carbine buffer that comes with 3 aluminum, 3 steel, and 3 tungsten weights, as well as rubber spacer discs to help reduce operating noise. These can be arranged in different combinations to set the buffer weight in a range from 1.7 to 5.6 ounces. The heaviest of these combinations is what I used in my episode on the FRT to ensure proper cycling. There's one more buffer type that can be encountered, those in straight blowback pistol caliber ARs. Obviously, this isn't an issue with the gas system because they don't have one. Since this type of AR also tends not to have a locking mechanism, they're more reliant on buffer weight to time bolt speed. Pistol buffers are found in a weight range of 5 to 8.5 ounces. I recently purchased an 8-ounce buffer for my retro Colt 6450 Repro to smooth out its operating cycle. Of course, there can be many other causes of malfunctions in the AR family of firearms. Improper bolt carrier velocity is only one of them. However, it's an element that can be tested quite easily. After attempting to diagnose the problem, simply swap out heavy or lighter buffers to see if that makes an improvement in function. As a final point, the number one cause of firearm malfunctions is still improper cleaning and lubrication. It's essential to properly maintain our firearms. Have fun and safe shooting.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son. I don't reckon you got long. I've seen that before. Gut wound. The slug's probably torn right through your liver.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weird will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brenna Bach and David Bach. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Sometimes you just gotta punt.
When I saw this title, I'd just been talking about from SHOT Show that there's a company that has a hydraulic buffer, which I think is also working as the recoil spring for 1911 pistols, and we got talking about specifically Oddball is like, why? And we got speculating on why it might be but number one, so expensive, and two, a desirable thing. And I was wondering if he was going to talk about the world of pistol buffers, but we were talking a little bit about that before the show. And essentially the line is, yeah, if you want a pistol buffer, don't. Just make sure you've got good springs in the gun, and you're changing them out on a somewhat regular basis, especially if you notice that the slide velocity is going up, et cetera. But the buffers, the big issue is that they last a certain amount of time and then they stop, and especially like a lot of the plastic and fiber ones, they just completely disintegrate, and then your gun's likely going to jam.
So when you say pistol buffer, you mean the kind of rubber, plastic, nylon, whatever little cushions that you put inside of a pistol?
Yes. Yeah. It's usually like on the guide rod and spring assembly sort of thing.
Okay. I don't have any experience with those.
Yeah. The only experience I've ever had with them is, somebody bought a used gun and had one installed, and then suddenly one day at a range trip, the gun jammed up hard and needed to be completely torn apart because that buffer broke and was now in a bunch of little pieces spread throughout the internals of the gun.
Wouldn't it just be better to get a stronger recoil spring?
Yeah. No, that's exactly what is the better choice.
And what about changing out the hammer spring?
Oh, Aaron.
Will that affect recoil?
Yes. In theory, that could. If you have a hammer-fired gun, that would in fact affect recoil. but it's called the mainspring. And Ian just put out, at the time of our recording, Ian put out a video on the CZ482 pistol, which is super duper interesting and a really, really cool video. But he does point out the parts of the gun and mentions the hammer spring. And I'm just like, A2 Brute. It's called a mainspring because in the earliest of firearms, that is the one spring. That's the one spring that's required of a firearm. All the others do other stuff. But some manufacturers do call it hammer springs. I just don't agree with that. You know who will definitely be sending me messages using the term hammer spring?
Our listeners.
I make one review in Handgun Radio about how Lipton tea is not very good, and suddenly I get boxes of stuff sent to me all the time.
Well, to be fair, most of that's from Xander.
Yeah, David's been part of it as well. But we want to thank our listeners, each and every one of you. We really appreciate you joining us for this Assorted Calibers podcast. But we got to give an extra special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. To being a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like our hilarious blooper reels, the ACB Films tracks, and the ACB Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I've got a blog. It's weirdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
He hates 1911s, and I just love revolvers. It's opposite day, and our opposite opinions are assorted, just like our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Well played, Aaron.